Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for Inside the Zone. Justin Kinney joining us as always from Optimum Performance Sports. And Justin, we've got 4 teams left.
Yes, we do.
Semi-state this coming Friday. Which of these teams are you most surprised is still here? Because at the beginning of the season, you know, we had a few teams in mind that we thought might make it to Lucas Oil Stadium. I think we've got a good mix of teams that we thought might be here and some teams that have been a little bit of a surprise in a good way.
I would say the Carroll Chargers in this position is the most surprising to me because for the better part of a decade, no 6A area team has been able to crack that code of going deep into the postseason at the highest class in Indiana, and Carroll has been able to do it. And dominant throughout the regular season in the SAC, we felt, well, that's great, but let's see what they can do in the playoffs, and they've exceeded at least my expectations of what they've been able to do. First ever regional championship for the program and also for this area in Class 6A. And their reward is to face the #1 team in the entire state. At least it's at home.
That's the best part about it. Let's start right there as we talk about these 4 semi-state games, because as you mentioned, it is the first ever 6A regional championship we've seen from a team from Northeast Indiana. They're down 20-7 at half on the road at Lafayette Jeff, a team that took down Crown Point the week before. No pushover are the Broncos.
Yeah.
What did it say about Doug Dinan's team to have kind of the intestinal fortitude to come back and kind of will themselves to a win in the second half on the road this deep in the playoffs?
Man, the resiliency in all 3 facets of the game. You looked at offensively being held to just 7 points into the second half, and then a couple touchdown passes by Jimmy Sullivan, and one to Braden Steely, and the other one to, who was it that scored the second touchdown? Jaden Hill. And put them ahead, and then the defense then had to step up after that. The goal line stand on 4th and goal to 1, and then the big interception by Jorge Valdez, that just a tremendous play. And if you're Lafayette Jeff, you're questioning why you're even putting the ball in the air at that point.
It's Malcolm Butler, Super Bowl Seahawks,
very much
style.
is. So it turned out for Carroll, but they made the plays when they needed to, coming back from double digits down on the road. We could say the same thing about Snyder as well here in a couple minutes. But what Carroll was able to do was tremendous, and they are able to host a game on Friday. And I don't really think that people around here understand the magnitude of this game. Yes, it's a berth in the state championship, but the first 6A game that an area team has been in the semi-state or beyond, it's at home. It'll be a huge crowd at Carroll. HSD will travel well because it's a huge school too. So this is a big deal that's coming on Friday in Huntertown.
And it's going to be a big challenge too, because when you look at HSC on paper,
they're good.
They're really good at everything, it seems like. They don't have a lot of holes. Ty Bradley, their quarterback, I don't know if it's pronounced Bradley or Brattle. I just know his statistics. Over 1,500 yards passing. They've got running backs. They've got a 6'4" receiver. That's their #1 guy. They've got a lot of weapons, and nothing jumps out at you, but all of it's really good when you break them down statistically.
The way the Indy area works in 6A is every year there's a team, right? Some years it's Warren Central. Some years it's Ben Davis. Some years it's Carmel. This year it's Hamilton Southeastern. And this is an absolutely loaded team across the board. No real true weakness with this group. And it's going to be the biggest test by far for Carroll coming up on Friday. We saw what that HSE team was able to do against Homestead. Really not allow anything in terms of offensively, much hope with Homestead. Carroll's a better football team than the Homestead Spartans, but we saw that dominance of HSE and what they can do to a solid team from this area in 6A. So I'm not putting it past Carroll because who would have thought they would get here anyway outside of Carroll? But this is the biggest test they've had by a considerable margin.
What can they do to make this a ball game? I mean, you mentioned it is going to be a big test. HSE comes in ranked #1, the team to beat in 6A. What are they going to have to do to make this a ball game? Because if it's a ball game in the fourth quarter, Carroll has enough playmakers on both sides of the football. We saw it last week that they can make something happen if this is a close ball game.
The margin for error is incredibly slim for Carroll in this game. So limit turnovers, limit penalties, make some plays in the special teams, and try to at least break even in the war up front in the trenches. And I think those 4 things have to happen. You cannot give HSC any short fields. It'd be great to force a couple turnovers. Don't turn the ball over yourself. We saw Columbia City, who I still think is a reasonably competitive team against Kokomo, if they're not turning the ball over 5 times.
Yeah.
You know? So Carroll can stay in this game if it makes a lot of plays and a lot of things go its way. But the margin for error is considerably more for HSE in this game than it is the Chargers.
Let's talk about Spooler Stadium, man. Snyder, if you were following it on Twitter or, I don't know, watching the game online, I was checking it on my phone. It was 7-0. It was 14-0. Then it was 21-0 with like 2 minutes left, and you're just like,
okay, well, whatever.
Wow. At Mishawaka, fourth-ranked team on the road, and then Kamari Juarez returns that kick for a touch. I don't know why. At this point in the season,
why do you kick to him?
People have seen this guy flip so many games with his returns. Anyway, he gets a touchdown. They get some momentum and a half. Boom, they take off in the third quarter and come back and win this one on the road. Valparaiso comes into Spooler Stadium on Friday night. How do you see this one playing out? This is one, Spartans are the number 1 ranked team in 5A. And after last week, they have to think, hey, man, no matter what anybody throws at us, no matter how far down we are, we can do this. We can win.
There are few programs, few teams out there that can fall down like that and then fight back. And Carroll's one of them, and Snyder's another one of them. And even I haven't talked yet to Coach Tippmann about how you turn the screws like that, being down 21-0, and not just the offense, but defensively couldn't get stops. And then only giving up 1 touchdown in the second half. And with that type of offense, that's a very when you're playing that with the defense and very gap-oriented, and you have responsibilities you need to do, and just, I don't know if a light just flipped on at halftime or I got in everybody's faces. I don't know what happened in the break, but the Kamari Juarez return for the touchdown kind of gave Snyder some momentum going into the break, and then that continued into the second half. It was a phenomenal performance by Snyder. And now, similar to when we saw Carroll have to play Jeff instead of Crown Point, I think it's a better matchup for Snyder to play Valpo instead of Maryville, and now Valpo has to come here to play the Panthers.
Yeah, and Valpo's coming off a 15-14 win against Maryville, so their confidence is riding high. They've shown that they can, when it comes, chips are down in the fourth quarter, they can come out and grind out a victory. But if you're Snyder, you didn't get to touch the ball a whole lot.
One time in the first half, right?
Yeah, the offense. So obviously, you've got to stop the run in a game like this, and you're taking a look at a Valparaiso team that does a little bit, sort of like we talked about Hamilton Southeastern, does a little bit of everything well.
Sure. Yeah, it's not a dominant team one way or the other, and I think this is where you get into the playoffs at this round, semi-state, even state finals, where a lot of well-rounded football teams, where you're not talking about, okay, this is a predominantly run or predominantly pass team. This is a very balanced team. The defense is going to be very good. The offense is going to be very good. But getting this game at home, I think, is advantage for Snyder. And just the way they were able to come back last week, it just feels like a team that now that you're coming home and you get to host Valpo, it's a better matchup than Maryville would have been for you. And you feel like you always have that one game in the postseason that maybe you steal or has to go your way. And that was last week for Snyder. So if they can continue that momentum now into Friday night, you have to like their chances.
Let's talk about 2A. Bishop Luers with an impressive performance last week against Bluffton. Yeah. Bluffton was not able to take advantage of some of the size that they had on the offensive and defensive lines, and Luers was able to get the ball to their athletes and use those guys to the best of their ability. So now it gets ramped up quite a bit.
It gets real.
They have to travel to Andrean. We saw how good Andrean was last season when they played Eastside in the semi-state round. So what is going to be the key against the Fighting 59ers this time around? I mean, when you look at the scouting report, it starts with Drake Bowen. You got a 6'2" linebacker going to Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, might very well be the front runner for Mr. Football this year.
Well, we say when you get into 2A for Bishop Luers, now you play like teams similar to your size. You should be able to dominate this. That's out the window now with Andrean. Okay, you've gotten to far enough where now you're going to be playing some really, really good football teams. And Andrea and the Fighting 59ers are that. You mentioned Drake Bowen, but this is a very good football team in all three facets of the game. And the quickness factor that Luers has been able to take advantage of through the sectional, and especially last week against Bluffton, it's marginalized now this week because Andrean can match you in speed. So this is going to become more of a war and winning one-on-one battles for Bishop Luers physically and not just using your speed. That was the frustrating thing for Bluffton last week. They felt like they had the size edge, and they did, but Bishop Luers was gone before they could initiate or gone before they could really engage up front. So the problem now for Bishop Luers is you don't have that significant speed advantage like you had up till now in the playoffs. You have to find other ways to be successful, and that's going to be a tough task going to Andrean and doing that.
I know you've got a Division I defensive back in Nick Thompson, but this is going to be the best passing attack that they've faced since they wrapped up the regular season. You've got a quarterback in Andrean, and the starting quarterback we saw last year at Andrean out for the season with an injury.
Yeah.
So they're actually playing with a backup quarterback in Billy Henry, but he's thrown for over 1,600 yards, and he's got a big receiver in Patrick Clax with almost 1,000 yards receiving. You've got Bowen to hand the football off to. Like, this is a team, this is the best passing attack that they will have faced in the postseason.
And Bishop Luers has athletes in the secondary that can match up with a lot of these guys. But the problem is can Bishop Luers get pressure on the quarterback? Can they get in the backfield and disrupt? If they're allowing 4, 5, 6 seconds back in the pocket, even the best defensive backs are going to lose coverage and lose contain. So for Bishop Luers, I think it's going to be a key for them as that defensive front and even that defensive front seven to be able to get some pressure in the backfield of Andrean. It's a big-time matchup for the Knights. They've gotten this far. Congratulations to them. This is by far their most difficult challenge to date in the postseason.
What's the message this week in practice if you're Kyle Lindsey? Because when we get to the postseason with Bishop Luers, as long as they've had a solid football team, they're going to be the favorite week in and week out. And because of the trip and the drive to Andrean and Andrean's history and Drake Bowen and all that good stuff, not a lot of people are, I would say the edge is to Andrean as far as what people are picking. They don't get to be the underdog in 2A playoffs very often. How does that play into what Kyle Lindsey and what the message is out at Luers Field this week during practice?
Well, I think if you're Kyle Lindsey, you're really leaning into the fact that you've played teams this good in the regular season. So you look at Carroll and you look at Snyder, both in the semi-state too, and you say, this is why we go through the battles of the regular season in the SAC, to prepare for teams like Andrean. So as good as the Fighting 59ers are, you've seen big teams in Carroll. You've seen fast and bulky and physical teams like Snyder. You've seen really athletic teams like Northside. You've played them all. So that's why we play in the SAC, is to get you ready for this game. And is it enough then to put you on the level of Andrean? We'll find out coming up on Friday.
1A, Adams Central heads to North Judson. These are the number 2 and 4 ranked teams, respectively, in the 1A state poll. We thought Adams Central would be here. They are.
They are,
Carroll Flora was no match for Adams Central. I was at that game for the first half. I got the gist of what was happening when it was 28-0 at halftime.
Okay, same old, same old.
Yeah. Forced 5 turnovers, not to mention a blocked punt in the first half. I mean, Carroll didn't do themselves any favors by shooting themselves in the foot. You're not going to win on the road against a team like AC in the postseason doing that. So it's going to be a tougher challenge, though, this week in North Judson. This has been one of the better teams in 1A all season. They have a 3-headed monster running the football. What are they going to – but in that respect, if you're Adams Central, you know what the game plan is, and it's stop the run this week. That's it.
And we continue to try to find a team that can match up with Adams Central, but they continue to be pitted against teams that play right into Adams Central's strengths in terms of stopping the run, right? And that's the concern for me with North Judson, is I don't know if you can match up with what AC is able to do. And when we look at that, what it feels like an inevitable matchup between AC and Lutheran is, okay, Lutheran's going to spread you out. Lutheran can attack you downfield. Balance in terms of the matchup, that's tough for Adams Central.
Right.
But they've continued to play teams that, okay, their strength's running the ball and stopping the run. Well, nobody's been able to do either against Adams Central this year. So you look at the Flying Jets' chances, and you have to like them. You never know when you have to hit the road for a semi-state. It'll be a good atmosphere, but this AC team is just absolutely rolling. I come back to the fact you hope they have to play a game with 4 quarters this week to prep for that Lutheran game next week. We'll see if North Judson can at least give them a challenge. Give these guys something to think about heading into the halftime break for a change, other than, well, running clock, we're going to get home pretty early.
Right. And to me, the one thing I would, if I'm Adams Central, obviously stopping the run against North Judson, but just in watching them play, got a little sloppy in the first half, both teams, but with fumbles. So ball security is going to be a big thing, because you get to North Judson, and a team that runs the football, and if they are able to run it semi-effectively, taking time off the clock, you can't afford 2-3 turnovers. And I know fumbles were an issue, not interceptions, but fumbles and hanging on to the football early was a little bit of an issue for AC last week. You want to make sure that doesn't happen against a team that can run the football like North Judson.
Yeah, the margin for error, of course, becomes smaller and smaller because you're playing better and better teams as you continue to go on, and they're going to take advantage of your mistakes, and vice versa. You're going to be able to take advantage of opponents' mistakes. So we saw that bite Columbia City last week. AC is that good that they were able to make some mistakes last week and survive it. That may not be the case against North Judson. It definitely won't be the case against Lutheran.
What are you most looking forward to about this week? Because You win Friday night, you're headed to Lucas
You're
Oil
heading to Lucas
Stadium.
Oil
People
Stadium.
are already making Thanksgiving week plans.
Yep.
It could be a wild Friday night because every team at this you can luck into a sectional title or get the
Yep.
draw or something like that. Generally not a regional title, but you can't luck into a semi-state championship. So you've got really good football teams playing at this point. That's all that's left at this time of year.
Yeah, at this time of year, it's all about executing, not looking ahead to, because talk throughout this week will be, well, you one more win and you're there, but you have to take care of business on Friday. Of varying degrees of matchups. You look at AC and you're feeling pretty good. You look at Lures, that's trouble. Going to Andrea. Snyder, feeling pretty good at home. Carroll, that's trouble. You're hosting the number 1 team in the state of Indiana. So when you look at the matchups, we have 4 area teams. Conceivably, we could have all 4 in different classes, but who has the best matchups? And I think that's going to come into focus here throughout the week and what leads into Friday night. And then maybe at this point next week, we can actually talk about who's playing when, because we have no idea which classes are which with the IHSAA, which is absolutely stupid.
It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. Hopefully we're making trips.
Friday and Saturday?
Friday? I don't know. Why can't they all play on one day? Can we just have everybody from Fort Wayne play on one day?
Yes, whoever makes it, I think they should accommodate the IHSAA's, the Fort Wayne area teams play all on
They
one
should
day.
accommodate this show specifically.
absolutely.
And just play all the Northeast Indiana teams on one day. Who cares about the rest of the state,
They're
right?
two of the biggest prima donnas in the state of Indiana. Why shouldn't they?
There you go.
They cater to us.
And that's why you'll be tuning in for Inside the Zone next Monday. For this week, I'm Glenn, he's Justin, and we'll see you next week talking state finals.